WWL-TV, Channel 4, New Orleans. Bill Elder and Don Westbrook with weather. This is Louisiana's news leader, Channel 4's Eyewitness News.
A New Orleans City Councilwoman officially throws her hat into the ring for U.S. Senate. GOP presidential candidates are gearing up for Super Tuesday primaries, and a second carrier group heads towards Taiwan as China prepares for missile exercises near the island. Good afternoon. This is the 12 o'clock news for Monday, March the 11th. Well, the field is getting crowded in the race for U.S. Senate from Louisiana. Today, New Orleans City Councilwoman Peggy Wilson officially announced that she is running to fill J. Bennett Johnston's seat. The lifelong Republican says her campaign will focus on lowering taxes, fighting crime, and reforming the welfare system.
My candidacy is for people, their needs and their lives, not for special interests. It's time to reclaim our streets and public places from criminals and thugs. It's time we face the problem of welfare and the homeless with genuine solutions, not with a bloated bureaucracy which has become an industry in itself.
Wilson joins 4 other candidates who have officially announced. On the Republican side, there's David Duke, Louisiana Congressman Jimmy Hayes, and State Representative Woody Jenkins, all 3 running under the GOP banner. State Attorney General Richard Ayoub is the only Democrat who so far has announced his candidacy. Louisiana voters, meantime, will be heading to the polls tomorrow. Several races are being held, including the race for mayor in Kenner. An election for mayor will also be held in Mandeville, and in Abita Springs, voters will decide on a new police chief. The polls will also open for Super Tuesday, but their clerk of court says only registered Democrats and Republicans are eligible to vote. The only races appearing on the ballot are presidential nominees for the Democratic and GOP nominations. The polls will open, by the way, from 6 in the morning and close at 8 o'clock at night. The State Elections Commission is predicting a low turnout tomorrow, somewhere between 20 and 25%. Well, with Super Tuesday close at hand, the Republican presidential candidate field shows no sign of changing anytime soon. With more than a third of the support needed to gain the nomination, Bob Dole already has that locked up, and he's looking to pick up more, especially in Texas as well as in Florida. Sandra Hughes has the latest.
Thank you. I accept the nomination, whatever it is.
Clearly confident that he's finally on the threshold of the Republican presidential nomination, Senator Bob Dole was courting Super Tuesday voters in the 2 biggest states to hold primaries this week.
We just left Dallas, Texas, where it looks good in Texas. That's another big state. Florida and Texas are the big ones on Tuesday, but they're all very important.
The most recent polls show the frontrunner has reason to be confident, with more than 50% of those polled in Florida saying they support him. Numbers like that have left some to conclude that Super Tuesday has become little more than a formality for Dole, as he focuses on the White House.
And Bill Clinton doesn't trust the states. He doesn't trust the people. He wants to keep all the power in Washington, D.C., and Bob Dole wants to send it back to you, and that's a basic difference in our philosophy.
The same Florida poll showed eroding support for Dole's only remaining competitors, Steve Forbes, who also campaigned in Florida, and Pat Buchanan, who stayed in Texas. Buchanan has shown no indication that he'd be willing to close ranks behind Dole, and has even threatened that Dole would be in for the fight of his life at the Republican convention if he chose Colin Powell as a running mate.
How you doing? Hi.
Forbes supporter Jack Kemp was signaling a possible softening toward Dole, saying from the campaign trail that Forbes is looking for recognition from Dole of his flat tax agenda before any negotiations to end Forbes' candidacy could take place.
The sun's coming out on Tuesday.
But right now, Bob Dole is recognizing the possibility of sunny skies across all 7 Super Tuesday states. And a Super Tuesday sweep would give the senator 2/3 of the delegates needed for the nomination. Sandra Hughes, CBS News, Miami.
Well, New Orleans fire officials say an electrical short is to blame for a smoky fire earlier today on North Robertson Street. The one-alarm blaze broke out about 6:30 this morning. Authorities say someone inside of the brick home woke up and smelled smoke, and everyone, fortunately, got out safely. Passengers aboard the Amtrak Sunset Limited got an unwelcome early wake-up call today. Their train derailed in the Florida Panhandle on its way to New Orleans. Amtrak says 3 cars left the tracks but did not overturn. No word on the cause of the derailment, and no injuries were reported. Crews in Wauwege, Wisconsin, though, are making progress in clearing up a week-old train derailment there. Special teams have emptied 2 derailed propane tanker cars. The town's entire population of 1,700 people has been evacuated since last Monday's derailment and fire. School officials today are meeting to discuss ways to try and get hundreds of kids back into the classroom. Well, China has issued a strong warning to the United States. Stay out of the Taiwan dispute. But that warning may be too late. The U.S. is already making a show of military force in the region. Their approach to Taiwan is a response to China's plans to stage live fire war games near the island. Barry Peterson reports.
The 2 American aircraft carriers are sailing into increasingly troubled waters. Their presence hailed today by the Taiwanese as a stabilizing effect and quickly condemned by Communist China. China's foreign minister in Beijing minced no words, warning that American involvement in the Taiwan situation would be, in his words, reckless and erroneous. He called suggestions that America intervene preposterous and warned that it would create what he called a chaotic situation. The war of words comes a day before the Chinese military starts practicing for real war. Another round of military exercises ominously close to Taiwan. The Chinese consider Taiwan a renegade province and are vowing to take it back.
I think their strategy is to use the military tool as a part of a combination of diplomatic and military pressure against the Taiwanese government to try and get them to moderate what the Chinese believe is the Taiwan policy of looking for independence.
In Taiwan, there were more calls for independence during a presidential election rally here yesterday, the sort of thing likely to anger the Chinese even more. People here don't really think there's going to be a war, but each day seems to bring another escalation, and each escalation brings the unthinkable that much closer. Barry Peterson, CBS News, Taiwan.
Now, the governor of Okinawa says he wants U.S. military bases off the island. The governor testified today that the bases, in his words, exposes people to increased risk of crime. Opposition to the bases has intensified since 3 U.S. servicemen raped a 12-year-old girl. Still to come on Eyewitness News at 12 noon, the information superhighway stretches into a local university, and a new study on the effect of coffee and women. Well, 14 General Motors plants have now shut down, and more could close due to a strike at 2 GM brake plants in Dayton, Ohio. 40,000 employees are out of work so far, and no talks are scheduled between GM and the striking workers. Workers walked out last Tuesday over job and safety concerns. Meantime, a judge is ordering General Motors Finance Company to repay more than $4 million to 116,000 California customers. A ruling issued today says the company charged too much for insurance purchased as part of the car loan agreements. Well, the anxiety may be easing a bit on Wall Street. The Dow Jones average began the day with a slight loss, then gained ground after the first hour of trading. That follows a plunge of 171 points on Friday, the 3rd biggest point drop ever recorded. Well, sales of new homes are higher for the 2nd straight month. The Commerce Department says sales climbed 4.2% in January. Sales rose in the Midwest, South, and West, while the Northeast saw the worst decline in 9 years. The University of New Orleans is jumping onto the internet in a big way. The U.S. Department of Commerce has awarded a $368,000 grant to the university. It is to help build the Greater New Orleans Free Net. The Free Net will benefit teachers, students, and the community as well.
With the 1995 TIOP grant to the University of New Orleans for the Greater New Orleans Telecommunications Gateway FreeNet, we'll witness firsthand how TIOP is empowering communities and their residents. It will create a model for developing and funding and managing and expanding a regional World Wide Web, and this public-private partnership is the most important part of it.
Well, the FreeNet is otherwise made possible by private and public institutions. In health news, a new study finds women who drink coffee are far less likely to commit suicide than those who don't drink any at all. Eugenia Halsey explains.
Feeling guilty about all those cups of coffee?
I don't think it's healthy to drink too much coffee, and it's not healthy to eat too much fast food.
Maybe you shouldn't be so hard on yourself.
Harvard researchers followed more than 80,000 women for 10 years
and found coffee was actually a positive picker-upper.
Women who drank more than 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day were at about 1/3 the risk of suicide over the 10-year period compared to women who never drank coffee.
Similar benefits were associated with the caffeine in cola, tea, and chocolate when consumed in the same quantities as that in coffee. Does this mean caffeine could be used to treat depression?
It's too early to recommend that depressed people drink coffee, for instance. I think the main thing that we see in this is the reassurance that drinking lots of coffee can't be bad for your health.
Caffeine is the most widely used stimulant in the world. It acts on the central nervous system and has mild antidepressant effects. So psychiatrists say it's not surprising that habitual coffee drinkers report feeling better and less irritable after their morning fix. But they say people shouldn't count on it to relieve depression.
If you're depressed, you need to realize that you have a serious clinical problem that is going to involve the need for a clinician to help you, and you should not stop with just caffeine. That's not enough.
Some doctors tell heart patients and people with other health problems to steer clear of caffeine. For those who are trying to kick the caffeine habit, doctors say it's a good idea to reduce the amount of caffeine gradually.
During that period, people who otherwise might have underlying anxiety or depression, if you throw on top of them an acute mood instability, might be pushed over the edge to do something they otherwise would not.
The researchers say more studies are needed to tell whether drinking coffee actually helps prevent depression. In the meantime, a second cup may be just what the doctor ordered. Eugenia Halsey, CNN, Washington.
Still to come in this program, Don says temperatures are warming. His forecast when we come back. Another gorgeous day outside today, and best of all, it's warming up. Here's Don with the story.
Right on both counts, Bill. Look at our conditions around the city at midday. 51 degrees now at New Orleans International, 52 at Audubon Park, 55 in Slidell. Yes, sunny skies. Notice that humidity, only 35%. Our wind out of the north at 8 miles per hour at New Orleans International. Here at Channel 4, we've had gusts to 20 miles per hour this morning. Our pressure, 30.47 and falling. Other temperatures around the region at midday. 53 in Shreveport, 54 in Monroe, 51 in Jackson, Macomb, 54, Alexandria, 56, 55 in Lake Charles and Lafayette, 54 in Baton Rouge, 51 now in Kenner, and 59 in Biloxi. Well, the biggest weather story in the country is occurring right here off the south coast of Florida, an area of low pressure, very strong and continuing to strengthen. The counterclockwise circulation around that low bringing a great deal of cloudiness, strong winds across Florida, and lots of heavy rain, 5, 6, I'm sure even more inches than that before it's done, and considerable beach erosion occurring, especially along the east central and northeast Florida coastline. Across our part of the central Gulf Coast, the sunshine has returned and a beautiful day ahead. The satellite sequence shows you these clouds rotating around that low, covering most of the Sunshine State. Not very sunny today. I don't think we're going to see any of those clouds across southeast Louisiana, although during the afternoon from the west and southwest we could get a few high thin clouds, but mostly sunshine. Here, those thunderstorms that continue to move in from the Atlantic, eventually we're going to see that area of low pressure moving toward the north. By tomorrow, it should be nearing the mid-Atlantic coastline, finally giving Florida a break with the rain ending and a bit of sunshine returning. For us, high pressure centered over the north central Gulf Coast is going to continue our sunshine tomorrow and also allow the winds to die down a bit. As for this afternoon, we'll say mostly sunny, highs of 55 to 60, a bit breezy, northeast wind at 10 to 18 miles per hour. Sunset today at 6:06 tonight. Clear and chilly, but nothing like the weekend. North of the lake tonight, 32 to 37. South of the lake, including the city tonight, no freeze, 36 to 41. Northeast wind, 6 to 12 miles per hour. Tomorrow, lots of sunshine continuing. Temperatures continuing to rise, 60 to 65. Northeast wind about 6 to 12 miles per hour. Sunrise in the morning at 6:14. But for today, small craft advisory is in effect for the coastal waters east of the river River. West of the river and on the area lakes today, you should exercise caution. North and northeast wind out there at 12 to 22 knots and gusty. Seas 3 to 6 feet and the lakes choppy. Here are the tide times for today. Average tide range 3/10 of a foot. And that extended forecast. Notice how the temperatures are continuing to rise. We'll be in the 70s by Wednesday, Bill.
Right. Thank you, Don. And we'll be back with more right after this. Now, a sticky story courtesy of the U.S. Post Office. It's about a big change in a small essential item. Jim Stewart reports.
Only a government bureaucrat could have invented something as foul-tasting as a U.S. postage stamp.
Ugh, the taste. It's bad enough sometimes you have to lick the envelope.
So when the simple notion of a peel and stick stamp came along, most people thought, what a neat idea. Even the post office was impressed.
It is the hottest thing that we've got going.
And customers agreed.
Love them. Quick and clean.
But as with any new idea, things are not quite that simple at all. Because there's one group out there that doesn't like these new peel and stick stamps at all. America's stamp collectors. At a recent Washington stamp show, many serious collectors condemned the little stickers, mostly because they don't like the new glue.
They just seem to stick tenaciously.
They're so sticky. See, we put things in mounts, and you put those inside of a mount, you would have a difficult time getting them out again.
The collectors complained so loudly the first time sticky stamps came out that the post office relented, but not this time.
I think by the turn of the century, you will probably see anywhere between 90 and 95% of our stamps being produced in the self-adhesive format.
Which means having to use your tongue like a wet sponge, just one more of the past. Jim Stewart, CBS News, Washington.
All right, recapping the top stories now. New Orleans City Councilwoman Peggy Wilson officially announces she's running for the U.S. Senate, the seat being vacated by J. Bennett Johnston. The stock market is giving a volatile performance after Friday's dramatic sell-off. The Dow swung into positive territory, though, in the last few hours. At noon, the Dow was up more than 38 points. And China has already begun rehearsals for the live fire exercises near Taiwan. But 2 U.S. aircraft carriers are now in international waters to help Taiwan, presumably, if necessary. 12 o'clock news on this weather-wise, a gorgeous Monday, the 11th. Good night at 5, and bid you good day.